You are listening to the Life Coach School podcast with Brooke Castillo, episode number 346.
Welcome to the Life Coach School podcast, where it's all about real clients, real problems, and real coaching. And now, your host, Master Coach Instructor, Brooke Castillo.
Okay, my friends, we have another amazing guest today. You're welcome. This topic is amazing. I had asked who wanted to be on the podcast, and she presented this topic. I absolutely loved it. Welcome, Dr. Tanji, to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Brooke. I'm so happy to be here.
So let's start with, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit? Tell us a little bit about your story to becoming a coach, and a little bit about your practice, and about being a doctor, and about all your amazingness.
Okay, so I am Dr. Tanji, as you said. I have two jobs. One is as a certified life coach, and one is as a physician. I'm a forensic pathologist, and for people who are unfamiliar, that those are CSI doctors. So we get to hear really cool stories every day and figure out like why people passed away. And in my coaching practice, I started off coaching people on burnout, but as I coach people more and more on burnout, what I discovered was that there is something that lies even deeper than burnout, and it's what I coined success exhaustion. And essentially, success exhaustion is a sense of overwhelm and unfulfillment that you still feel. And the underlying core of it is because you're relying on external validation for your sense of happiness and success rather than your own internal guidance. So that's what I coach on.
I love this topic. And the reason why I love this topic so much is because I have a lot of very, very successful colleagues and friends that I have met through masterminds and through the industry, and people reaching out to me and at the income level that I'm at. And one of the things that people say to me all the time is, I don't understand how you're so successful and how you work so little and how you are so happy, because so many of them are still chasing some level of fulfillment and feel some internal kind of deregulation when they achieve that success. And what I've watched people do is achieve success and then sabotage it.
Yeah.
And I think it is because of this reason. And I just want to, before we dive in much deeper, and I can't wait to get into this topic, I noticed this also in, when I first started out, it was in weight loss, right? And so I would notice this with my clients. They would achieve this level of weight loss, and some of them would do it with me as a way to gain my approval, right? Which is the wrong reason. It's like I was the authority in their life. And so as long as they were coaching with me, they were able to lose weight. And then as soon as that was over, they were exhausted because the reason and what was fueling it was this idea of needing my approval. And so one of the lessons that I learned from that really early on, first of all, is how important it is to hold space for a client and not care about the results, right? And not make their results about me, but also from their perspective through success, like success isn't going to be sustainable, and it isn't going to help you evolve and grow if you're doing it from the wrong sort of fuel. So
Exactly.
would you agree? Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yes, exactly. And, even when I first started coaching, and I think a lot of people do this when they come through your school and they have you as a mentor,
Yes.
is that, you'll start a Facebook Live and you'll be like, hello, my friends. But that's not the way my internal voice speaks to people. And so that becomes exhausting because you keep doing and doing and doing all these things, but you're operating from an internal voice that's not yours, or an internal power that's not even yours.
Yes. The other piece of this that I think I teach pretty regularly, but may not be internalized and applied to this, that I think would be important for my podcast listeners to know, is this idea that it's better there than here. And once we achieve this level of success, that there should be some expectation of more joy or more self-pride or more self-esteem. And I was coaching a woman last week, and she was telling me she had reached the $500,000 mark in her business, and she thought something was terribly wrong because she didn't feel great all of the time. And I told her, I said, what I think's happened is I think you've made $500,000 and remained human.
You haven't magically ascended.
Right.
Yes.
I think your humanness has stayed intact here. And so it was like kind of delightful for her to like recognize that, because I do think when we dream and we visualize and we identify with our goals, we do imagine like when we're thin, when we have the true romance, when we make all the money, when we have the success, that somehow we will then drop into a better version of ourselves. And the truth is, we drop into the better version of ourselves as we're accomplishing it, and yet we remain human. So when we push ourselves past our pain because we think that once we arrive, the pain will go away, we're terribly disappointed.
Yes. And that I also see that one mistake we make is that you've arrived somewhere and that's the end point of your journey.
Yes.
And if you're really listening to like your internal guidance, like I don't think any of our souls came here to just like, make $500,000 and stay stagnant for the rest of our lives and live in like this utopia or whatever.
Right.
Like our nature is to continuously expand and to grow into more and more glory, if you will. And I think that's why so many people are attracted to you in the life coach schools, because that's like one of the core fundamentals. It's like, what is possible for you? So in some respects, like with there's not better than here. Sometimes like some things are nice, you know what I mean? Like it's nice to be able to buy what you want. And, like now for me, it's nice for me to just buy whatever I want instead of like, I remember in medical school eating like oatmeal for like 2 weeks for dinner.
Right.
So that part's better. However, if there's something like internal that wonders if like there's like a base of like unworthiness or self-sabotage, those things are going to keep repeating themselves until you address them. And so like you can progress in life, but those things will always be there for you. And that's always going to be your work.
Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm. And so I think for me, when in my teaching and with my students, it's very important for me to sell everyone on growth and success. I think that one of the best ways that we can do our own personal growth is through our money work, because I feel like, and I love the way you use the word soul. And I think for just insert whatever word works for you all here. But I think one of the things that we forget is we are human, spiritual beings having this human experience. And so the goal isn't to always be in spiritual bliss, right? That's not for this world, but it's also not to be caught up in the worldly world. It's to balance those two things. So how do we stay in our spiritual essence? How do we stay connected to what we believe our source is and what our purpose is, but then also integrate that into the world and manifest that and kind of display that as kind of a reflection of our human life. And as I teach this and see people embrace their possibility and embrace what is true for them, I see them do it. When they do it correctly, they do it with an ease that doesn't even make sense, right? It's like, how in the world? Like so many of my $1 million earners are like, how is this my life? This is just so amazing. And there's still a lot of internal work. The difference is, and I'll be curious what you think about this. The difference is, even though they're still human and they're still struggling with self-doubt and worthiness and all of that, there's not a sense of hurry. And there's not a sense of hustling anxiety as if, I got to get this done. I got to get this accomplished. I got to hurry up. I got to extract the money right now, because it's being fueled by that underlying fear.
Yeah, I know for me, one of my core tenets is really and truly, number one, listening to my own soul and harnessing a sense of safety. Number two, choosing what I want to do in the world and how I want to express myself and come from a true place of service, right? So I know that, I've decided to have $1 million business, say, right?
Yeah.
And I also know that I have also decided to really become super curious about myself and my own growth and really fall in love with the process. And I know that sometimes, when you do that and you make certain decisions and you start to harness your own power, things fall in line really quick. Like there are some people who will make $1 million in a year and not even go through the 100K or the first 5K or whatever you have it. And there are some people where it'll take 20 years. And I think that's because everybody has a different curriculum.
Yes.
And I think it's very important not to compare yourself to other people in their curriculum because it's just not your curriculum.
Yes. Yes. That's so good. And just because you can do it faster doesn't mean you should.
Exactly.
And that's been one of the things that I've contended with a lot, because my ability as an entrepreneur is extraordinary now because of the amount of study that I've done in marketing, because of the amount of testing I've done with my market, because of the amount of mind management I've done, right? So the combination of being able to manage my mind, be a high level attractor, understand marketing, understand how to run business creates an opportunity for me to accelerate very quickly. So when I set my goal of making $100 million, it seemed ridiculously impossible. I mean, who makes $100 million? But now at 35 million, it seems much less impossible. And so often when I talk to other business owners or other people that are further along in their revenue journey or are at the same level, they will say to me, well, why don't you just make 100 million next year? Why don't you make it in the next 2 years? Like, all you need to do, and then they show me the math, right? All you need to do is have this many clients and add this many programs and do this and add this many employees and all of the things. And for me, it's not about the money and it's not about the money right now at all. Like, that isn't the purpose of it. And I think when the goal becomes at your own expense is when you get into trouble. So everyone on my team knows, listen, if it's not fun, we're not doing it.
Yes, that's one of my rules too.
Right? So if there's a way for us to make money, or there's a way for us to, compound our revenue or anything, and it's not fun for everyone on the team, we just don't do it. And we leave lots and lots and lots of money on the table because we've made those choices. There are a lot of programs, a lot of things we could do, a lot of advanced trainings that people are asking us for that we have chosen not to do because I want to work 3 days a week, and because my team and I want to have a great time and we want to enjoy the process, and we want to always be over delivering to our clients. So I think that's a great question for people to ask is, are you willing to delay your goal in order to feel the way you want to feel along that journey? Because I don't have any stress about making $100 million because I've given myself the space and time and the rules for doing that, right? My, caveat is it has to be fun. So I don't start feeling like, oh, I better hurry up and make $100 million. I better get on it because, people are depending on me to do that at all. I refuse to do that. I'm like, listen, we're going to dance our way up to that. And then we're going to dance our way on that glass ceiling and do a little spin, right? We're going to do all the things, but we're going to do it in a way that feels amazing. So tell me what you think about this. And I've said this many times, but I'd like to get your take on it. It doesn't matter how you feel when you get there. What matters is how you feel on the way there. Because if you visualize yourself there and you feel that now, that will create the feeling once you get there. And if you think, oh, I'm going to suffer my way there and then I'm going to be happy, that's when you're going to have the success exhaustion. So can you speak more to that?
Yes, there's two things I want to say about that. So the first thing, yes, absolutely. Like feeling your way there more and more and staying in the energy of that person who you're becoming is gold. It's one of the most valuable things that I've ever learned. And what I'll say about suffering, I feel like that's part of the process, right? Because that is a roadmap to where you need to grow, right? So if along the way, I know for me, like, when I first started, I had a lot of compare and despair. I would look at somebody and be like, why are they making money? I'm not making money, and Or, even in medicine. And so it was a lot of like insecurity type jealousy. Like when I started to compare my own level of success to like somebody else's. And what I learned through all of that is one day I was sitting there and I was running my models and I was like, you know what? I just didn't want to feel like insecure. I didn't want to feel jealous. You know what I mean? So, I would buffer in various ways or try to hurry up and get over to my intentional model. But what I learned one day, I just stopped. I was like, you know what? Thank you, insecurity, because, and it brings it back to the whole soul of it. It's just like, I know that I didn't come in with that. Like that's been some sort of like conditioning or programming or what have you. And that's not how my soul wants to feel. So I just started thinking all of those uncomfortable emotions because they point me back in the direction to where I'm supposed to go. So even suffering can be good to me. So,
okay. But let's make a little distinction here as we're doing this. I always like to like create as we go. So I think the suffering comes from thinking you shouldn't feel that way.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
When you actually process the jealousy and process the insecurity, it stops becoming suffering and just becomes pain. It just becomes the other side of the 50-50, right? Which is different than suffering. So I think what you're saying is we need to process the negative emotion. We need to go through it. It's all normal. It's all part of the process. When we suffer is when we think there's something wrong with us for feeling that way.
Yes.
Yes.
Or that we shouldn't feel that way.
Yeah, we shouldn't have that. Yeah. Because I've had a lot of people that have said that they kind of hate me, right? They begrudge me because they see me as a source of their jealousy, or they see me as a source of their envy. And they're like, sometimes I wish you weren't so successful because it makes me feel bad about myself. Or other coaches that are even closer to them, maybe they started in training at the same time and they're now accelerating. And so I think it's just a really important lesson for all of us that it's very normal as a human being to feel jealous. It's very normal as a human being to feel competitive and to compare and despair. And it's also an opportunity for us to process that emotion and then use that as a source of inspiration, of possibility, instead of what I've talked about on an earlier podcast, which is trying to pull that person down to your level so nobody wins, instead of rising up so you both win.
And even if you're successful in doing that, somebody else will just rise up and make $100 million. And
gosh darn it,
be like right in your face. Like, I made $100 million in 3 seconds.
Yeah, Brooke Castillo took 10 years. I didn't too. I'm often telling my student Corinne Crabtree that I want her to out earn me. Like that's my goal for her. I'm like, you got to catch up and out earn me. And I would be so delighted if that happened for her. And I do know that like how long it took me to make $10 million versus how long it took her. We're just accelerating everyone's process by being supportive of each other. And so I always want to encourage that like you will succeed at the level at which you believe in yourself and other people, not just believing in yourself and your clients. Okay. So you say here that there are actually 2 ways of achieving success. There's success exhaustion and there's success alignment. So do you just want to give us some quick, short definitions so people can see what the difference is and kind of put it in their mind?
Yeah, pretty much success exhaustion simply is when your success is fueled by external validation. And success alignment is when your success is fueled by internal validation.
Yes.
You do what your inner voice want, you live according to your inner motivations. Just kind of like you were just talking about, you don't do anything in your business. Like your business has a soul of its own. You have your own soul. And so your success has been fueled by internal motivation.
Yes, very much so. I think when your success is fueled by external motivation, the reason why it's so exhausting is because there's never enough approval.
That's true. Yes. And I also feel like it's so exhausting because that voice will just get louder and louder and louder until you listen to it, and life will begin to reflect the discord that's within your own body.
Yes. Yeah. So I've seen this happen with people that get success really quickly. So this has happened to a few of my students. They've done a blog post, or they've come on the podcast, or they've done a Facebook Live that went viral. Okay. And so all of a sudden they get this huge influx of approval, external validation, and it feels amazing. And they're so excited about it. And they get all these people signing up with them and they're doing all this great work. And so they feel the approval of that and they try to utilize that as fuel. And it works temporarily as long as the approval's coming.
Right.
But unfortunately, there's always going to be that one person that doesn't approve. Right?
Or several, yes.
Or several people that don't approve or think that you're doing it wrong. And when you're thriving on approval, right, when you're being fueled by that approval, that disapproval is devastating.
Mhm.
Now, when you're being what you call success aligned, which means you're aligned with yourself and your internal approval, you can get external approval and you can get external disapproval, and it doesn't affect your fuel for accomplishment. And I do
Exactly.
feel like that is one of the things that I learned very early on, is that people are going to love me,
Mhm.
and that doesn't really matter. And people are going to hate me, and that doesn't really matter. What really matters is, am I loving myself? Am I aligned with myself? And am I telling the truth? And what I
Yes.
have found is that the more I align with myself and the more I tell the truth, the more people love me, but also the more people hate me.
Yes.
And in order to grow to the level that I want to grow, I have to be able to tolerate the people that hate me. And if I am externally driven, there's no way I can do it.
Yeah. And I also feel like, when people hate on you or hate you,
Mhm.
and that triggers you,
Yeah.
then that's still just an area where maybe you don't quite accept yourself 100%.
Yes.
And I think that you've touched on this before in the podcast. It's like, what are all the ways in what they're saying is true?
Yeah.
And see that part of you and accept it and love that part of you anyway.
Right. Right. And also be able to say, is what they're saying true? Do I believe this? And even though they're mad at me, I disagree with them.
Exactly.
And that's okay. And that's okay. And I can let that go, because I can really feel the difference. Like, for example, when somebody comes at me and says, you talk about money too much, or you talk about loving money too much, doesn't bother me at all. Like, don't care, not upset. Fine. Somebody says I'm unkind, or I'm treating people unfairly, or I'm not aware of a mistreatment or a bias, that devastates me, because I know that it's true. I can find it, right? And there's work for me to do. And so that devastation isn't actually a negative thing. It's a beautiful thing for me. And I've grown so much when I can hear those things. So it's like, is this true for me? And if it is, will I look at it? Will I find what I'm missing? And if it isn't, do I have the courage to keep believing it anyway?
Yeah, it's like really having that willingness to explore yourself in the face of those things,
Yes.
and also having the discernment to know when something's coming just 100% from somebody else's own model
Yes.
that has nothing to do
Yes.
with you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And the way that I can tell y'all, just personally, and you might be able to relate to this, is when somebody accuses me of something that I know isn't true and that I don't believe, I have no resistance to it.
Mhm.
I just smile. When somebody accuses me of something that may be true, or I haven't evaluated, I haven't looked into, I feel myself get defensive.
Yeah.
I feel myself put the wall up, which feels in the moment like strength, but it's actually weakness. Because as Byron Katie says, the first act of war is defense.
Mm.
And when someone comes at me and I have no defense, there's no fight to be had. When someone comes at me and I defend it, it's because I have a dog in that fight, right? They've touched on something that is probably true for me, and I can look at it and I can be vulnerable in that space. So that's something I would recommend for all of us, especially as we're moving our way towards success, as people start accusing us of things. Now, listen, you may feel defensive because of a thought pattern too. So you want to look at it and evaluate. It doesn't mean that you have to change who you're being, but just paying attention and listening is something I think us as a country has a hard time doing
Yes.
overall as humans, right? Just listening to other people's sides and what they're saying, and is there truth to it, and can you find it?
Yes.
Most often we can, if it's been an unevaluated thing.
Yes.
Okay. So the next thing is, you say all the things that you focused on that have led you to success exhaustion are simply distractions. What do you mean by that?
I mean that a lot of people spend their time ruminating on these external things that they can't change, or spinning around, just still, for example, I'm in this job, I'm a forensic pathologist. And, something inside just begins to say, it's not that I had to up and quit my job and go move to Bali or something, but it was just urging me to kind of explore the things that bring me closer to myself, that I'm passionate about: personal growth and development, meditation, things of that nature. And that brings me to life coaching. And so I'm a doctor. And at the time, I wasn't aware really of any other doctor life coaches. Now there's a lot.
Yeah.
But at the time, I was just like, what do you mean life coach? I don't, I don't get it. I don't understand.
Right.
People are going to laugh at me. They're going to call me crazy. And
Well,
then
you're right. They will. It's okay.
yeah. But
Yeah.
then like, I just, just started looking into it and really became like, enthralled, obsessed, what have you, and decided to get certified. And as I begin to voice it, people are like, what are you talking about? And some people did laugh at me. Some people did call me crazy. And it's just one of those things, like worrying about those things consistently and worrying about how you're going to get people to still approve of you while following this deeper thing. It's a distraction because you miss what the deeper thing is going to bring you. Like
I love that.
Yeah. It's like life can't unfold for you until you make that first step. Right. And then so it's just kind of like if something's nudging you to, write a book or take a ballet class, it's just like you have to take that step, I believe, before, your soul or the universe or what have you opens up all the other things or continues to unfold like the fullness of who you are.
Oh my God, that's so beautiful. I think part of that, what I've been going through personally recently is really aligned with that. I think one of the things that makes us being success aligned so much easier is the willingness to fail. So for example, when you're deciding, hey, maybe I'll become a life coach, maybe I'll get certified, and everyone's like, you're out of your mind, you're crazy, what are you doing? Like allowing for the space for them to be right about that and to do it anyway. Maybe I am crazy. Maybe this is insane. Maybe, thinking about becoming a life coach when I'm a doctor, maybe that's the craziest thing I've ever done. And it feels aligned to me. So I'm going to try it. And if I fail at it, that's okay. If my friends are right about this, that's okay. But I'm not going to fail ahead of time and decide not to do it just in case they're right. I'm going to actually discover for myself. And so one of my friends recently was saying that she had started exploring one of my colleagues, one of my students' work in terms of being a coach. And she said, well, I just don't know if I said, why haven't you signed up for her program yet? And she said, well, I don't know if she's the right coach for me. And I said, well, you're never going to know unless you sign up and coach with her, whether she's the right coach for you. And the willingness to choose the wrong coach, the willingness to choose the wrong career, to choose the wrong avenue, to find out for sure is what success alignment is. It's weaving your way there in a way where you trust yourself enough to be willing to fail in order to succeed ultimately.
Yes. And be willing to, it's okay if you outgrow something, right?
Yes.
So that person may not be your lifelong coach, but if you're feeling the nudge, that is the coach for you right now.
Yes.
And you're not going to find your lifelong ultimate guru coach unless you sign up with this coach.
Right.
Like, unless you open the gift that's like right in front of you,
And this one may be your lifetime guru coach, but you'll never know, right? You may be missing out on that, right?
Yeah.
So I love that. That's so good. Okay. Yeah. So let's talk about what are the things that you work with your clients on, because do you work one-on-one or in groups?
I work one-on-one, and in December, I'm launching a course that will have a bonus group component to it.
Nice. Okay. Yes. What's the course called?
The Wealthy Happy Soul Project.
All right. Who doesn't want that? I love it. Okay. Yeah. And so they'll be able to find that on your website, and we'll talk about that at the end. Let's talk a little bit about the one-on-one coaching that you do. If somebody is feeling like a typical client for you would be someone who's feeling, I have success on paper, right? I'm hitting all the dots. I'm making the money. I have the career. I'm doing the things, and I'm exhausted from my own success.
Yes.
Okay. That would be the person that would talk to. Or they may be successful in one career and feel like they're missing out and maybe considering something else. Is that another group that you might work with?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Perfect. Okay. So tell me how you would work with someone.
So the way I work with people, first, like making sure they understand the difference between, success exhaustion and success alignment. And then I also work with them on actually being able to consciously create the lives that they want through internal guidance and validation.
Yes.
And so we talk about things like intuition, which to me is just simply awareness. So
Yes.
like, to me, I feel like the model is a very intuitive tool because it brings so much awareness to your life.
Yes.
It brings so much awareness to your problems.
Yes.
And
Yes.
also things like meditation and things of that nature where you can really just start to listen to what that voice, because so many of us are conditioned to ignore it from little kids. So a lot of us don't even know we're listening to like our inner voice, but it's, maybe it's our mom's voice, or, maybe it's, our, husband's voice, or, somebody potentially
or our unquestioned thoughts voice, right? That we aren't even deliberate. Yes, totally.
Yeah. The unmanaged mind voice.
Right. Exactly. Yes.
AKA the hot mess voice, but
exactly.
And so just kind of like opening up intuition and then bringing them into the power of now it's time to like really like, how do you decide what to do next, and understanding the true power of making strong decisions in creating where you want to go and committing to those things.
I love it. I love it. And so do you work with people for a certain period of time?
Yes, the course and my private program are 12 weeks.
Okay, perfect. Because this is something, y'all, it's a programming that's deep. And it's something that I think a lot of people think that they have a fear of success. I hear a lot of people say that to me. Oh, I have a fear of success. But I think it's very close to what you're talking about here. The fear is because you're focused on that external approval, the fear is that you won't get the approval, or you'll get the haters, or you won't be able to manage the approval once you get it. Because that's the problem with external approval. You have to keep trying to get it once you've gotten it, right? And so if you approach your success from a much more aligned internal place, which actually sounds like an easy concept, but it's very difficult to navigate if you don't have self-awareness. And that's one of the things that coaching gives us. And I'll tell you this, if you think you can do this with just self-coaching, I want to offer that you might not be able to, because so much of that programming is actually like primal. It's like in our DNA to look outside of ourselves for approval, because the way that we evolved as humans was in tribes, right? And so we evolved in a way where we were looking to other people for safety and for approval to be willing to stay in that group. And now as we've kind of evolved beyond that into more of an individualistic life where we're trying to be entrepreneurs and run these businesses, it's normal for us to snap back in. Do you like me?
Yeah.
Am I in the in crowd? Am I going to be able to stay in here? And just being aware of your brain doing that by having a coach that you can kind of process that with. Very, very important. So I would highly recommend that any of you who are on the trajectory of any kind of success, and I would recommend you've had a little bit of success, you've had a taste of it, and it's freaking you out, which for people that haven't had any success, it doesn't make sense for them because they think success will just feel like rainbows and daisies, but it doesn't. Like success brings up all of your stuff. And that's why so many people have success and then they sabotage themselves and fail and then just keep going back to that same level.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
totally.
I agree. And I also just wanted to add into, you had mentioned something about people's fear of success. I would also like to add that I think the fear is that they won't be able to sustain it, because I think like attaining success is a very intellectual, logical process. It's like you follow the steps, you do the math, and you'll get somewhere. But to actually sustain it and not sabotage yourself is a very internal process that requires that internal guidance that we've been talking about. So,
And I will say this too. I think that when you have success alignment, your success makes you feel proud of yourself internally. And that is something that most of us have not experienced. And the distinction is very important. When we are growing up, we want our parents, we want our teachers, we want our authority figures to be proud of us. And we feel that external validation and it feels amazing. And we are programmed for that, right? As children, there's nothing wrong with us that we're seeking external validation. But when you start aligning with your own internal validation, when you start feeling proud of yourself for your own accomplishments, it accelerates your growth at such a rapid rate because you start valuing your own opinion.
Mm-hmm.
You start valuing your own values and you don't sell yourself out and seek success at your own expense. When you start seeking success at your own expense, you're exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because,
amen, sister. Yes.
Right? Amen. That's what's up, right? Because what you're doing is you're always having to override your own internal wisdom. And it's exhausting to be doing that. And it's kind of like running around doing a dog and pony show. Look at me, look at me, look at me, look how great I am, to get a little drop of somebody feeling proud. And listen, other people are not good at being proud of you. Especially your mother. Right? And so you're trying to do so many things to make other people proud of you, when if you just aligned with what was true for you, being proud of yourself becomes just so good. That feels so amazing. And are you, and the other last piece, and I'm sure that you do this with your clients because it's so obvious, but we miss it, is taking the time. To feel that alignment and to feel that pride.
Yeah.
Because we're always on to the next thing, right? So like someone will say to me, well, I want to make $500,000. I'm like, well, can we acknowledge that you just made 3?
Yes. And I that's something I learned from you, is just like sitting and enjoying, like, while we're expanding our, capacity to have things, to have success, to really just enjoy like what we've already created.
Yes.
And we're all very powerful creators. It's just a lot of us don't even acknowledge it.
Well, and if you don't acknowledge what you've already accomplished, if you don't acknowledge what you've already done, you miss out on that being part of the fuel that accelerates you to the next part, right? Because if you've already made $300,000 and you feel super proud of yourself and super accomplished and super excited about the work that you've done, that will energize you. If you think, oh, that's not enough because Sally Jane made $1 million, that will deplete your energy. Yes. Totally.
Right. I like to think of it as like, this is all the evidence that everything I'm doing is working.
Yes.
Everything I'm thinking is working. Like everything I'm committing to it's working. It's working. It's working.
Yeah. And like, just recognizing all the ways in which you already are the badass, right? Because for you to have the goals that you have, for you to be listening to this podcast, for you to be doing the self-awareness work, you are already an amazing, spectacular human being. Like way beyond, right? And so if you don't acknowledge that, you miss that energy, you miss that fuel. So that is the alignment, by aligning with the success you've already have and then using that to propel yourself forward. And listen, some of you are like, well, I don't have any success. One of the things I learned from Jack Canfield that he says often is, did you make it through 3rd grade? Then you've had success. Right?
Yes.
and really like seeking that evidence for yourself.
Yeah. And even just being in the process of becoming, I hate to use the word better, but becoming, a more, sounding spiritual now, but a more expanded version of yourself.
100%. Yeah. More aware, more expanded, more evolved. You're never going to be better worthy wise, right? Because you can't increase your worthiness, but you can be better at acknowledging yourself, better at manifesting, better at aligning, better at managing your emotions and processing. And that's what we teach here. That's what, we're all teaching you, is how to take what you're learning on this podcast and actually apply it so you can enjoy your life more. Doesn't mean you're not going to have negative emotion. You're just going to stop beating yourself up for being human.
Exactly.
That's the biggest difference, which removes the unnecessary suffering. Listen, you're still going to have suffering, but you're just going to get rid of the unnecessary suffering, which will make your life way more fun.
Exactly.
Love it. Okay. So tell us how we can get a hold of you and hire you and work with you and learn more about you.
Absolutely. You can go to Dr. Tangie, that's DrTangie.com. And all of my stuff is there.
All her stuff is there. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I love this topic. I love you.
Thank you. I love you too.
I think that this topic for people, and I think a lot of my people listening who have been listening to the podcast and had success are ready for you. So go check her out, hire her, join her course in December, and enjoy. Have a beautiful week, everyone. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Bye, everybody.
Absolutely. Bye, everyone. Hey, if you enjoy listening to this podcast, you have to come check out Self-Coaching Scholars. It's my monthly coaching program where we take all this material and we apply it. we take it to the next level and we study it. Join me over at thelifecoachschool.com/join. Make sure you type in the THE lifecoachschool.com/join. I'd love to have you join me in Self-Coaching Scholars. See you there.